Hi, my name is Harrison with the Luxury Pergola. Today we're talking about installing our slat wall on our pergola. We're going to talk about the slat receivers and all the other parts that you would need. If you bought just the slat receivers and you're planning to put wood or composite or something else in them, that's a different video. The first part of this will still be semi-applicable, but that is a separate video. Okay, so what we're gonna do is watch the install itself. I'll pause it. We'll talk through what I'm doing, some of the tools that I'm using as well, what's gonna come in the package, how it's gonna look, all that sort of stuff. So that way I can watch it along with you. So obviously I'm gonna bring the product on the screen. Now the product itself is gonna come in varying sizes. This one here is a 12-foot long boxes of 4 slats in each box. It can be varying number of slats per box. And those tubes I'm picking up right now, those have the slat receivers in them, which are the channels like this, these U-shaped channels. And the screw cover as well is gonna be in that same one. And also the screws that you use, which are number 10s. If you bought our pergola, it's the bag D screws. All that stuff is inside those tubes. So I can cut those open and pull those out. And that's kind of the start, is just unbox everything that you have. Make sure you have everything before you get crazy started. Count everything, make sure we didn't make a mistake. And then once we start to build it, we can start putting things together. So as I'm taking these out, you can see that I have the screw covers, which are the skinny parts, and the slat receivers, which are those U-shaped parts. And then those are the screws that come in the bag as well. There'll be 20 screws per tube, which is more than enough for the aluminum ones and should be more than enough for wood ones also. When we install these, you can go bottom to top or top to bottom. I've done them both ways. These receivers are cut just slightly short, like an 1/8 inch short, to make sure that they fit in case you have something that either you did wrong or the pergola is just a slightly different size. So just decide if you care if it's really, really tight to the top or really, really tight to the bottom. In this case, as I said, I'm doing top to bottom. These are self-tapping sheet metal screws, so they will drive their own hole. It can be easier to pre-drive or pre-drill, so to speak, the hole through the receiver and then screw it onto the post, which is what I did there. The big thing I'm checking here is to make sure that it is aligned with the outside edge of that post. It's really important, I think, aesthetically, to make sure it's a nice clean line as you go down. So when you hold it there in place, on this one, what I did is I just held it. You'll see here a little bit later, I use clamps. If you don't have clamps, you can hold it the way I'm doing right here. I prefer clamps, which is why as I get going, you'll see I use clamps from here forward. It's just simpler to hold it in place and make sure that you get that nice clean line on the posts. I'm doing one in the top, one in the bottom to make sure that line looks good, and then I'll come in and add a 3rd screw there in the middle. You'll also notice on the outside edge, the screw cover is pre-assembled on that rail. So especially if you're gonna put that screw cover on the outside face, you wanna slide that on first, then make sure it's flush to the post as you install it, rather than install it flush, then slide the screw cover on and find out that you're an 1/8 inch proud. So make sure you decide which way you want to do it. I prefer putting the screw cover on the outside face. It's nice and clean. It's more of a straight line because the outside of the slat is a little more flared on the other side. And some people may not prefer to have that on the outside. So I'm doing the top now on the opposite side. It's the same process. Hold it up in place. Make sure that you like that screw cover on the outside edge flush with the outside of the post. And then I'm driving those same screws, starting first with the top. Make sure that I keep a nice clean line and then put the same thing in the bottom. And then now I'm just driving it into the post. Okay, so I use 2 clamps to hold it in place. The clamps, having the rubber on there would be really helpful to hold them straight. It makes it way easier to make sure you stay nice and even on the outside of that post. Once you have those clamps put on, you can just drive your screws and you have a lot less to worry about. Sometimes when you're driving these screws, force doesn't make it better. So don't just keep driving it as all your strength. And then sometimes as you get going, you might want to back the screw up a little bit just to make sure you keep all those shavings cleared and out as you drive all the way through the post. Now, as I speed it up here, we're gonna take all these slats out of the boxes, make sure that we get a nice clean fit. I'm double checking here that as I set it in, I can set it in diagonally. Now what I'm doing is working again from that bottom down. I'm adding the rail on. One of the tricks I do here a little bit later, which I'm not doing on this one, is actually using the screw cover to hold it next to that post and keep my line flush as I go down. So slide the screw cover slightly down so that it's actually on the next rail. And then when you clamp it in place, you can use that same screw cover to hold the joint nice and even from one to the next. When you do this, you want to make sure you only have one screw cover on at a time. Don't try and pre-slide on all the screw covers. As you'll see here in a little bit, that screw cover, as I call it, is there to cover the screws that you use to drive into the slats. If you cover it, you're gonna need to peel them right back off in order to screw through that face and into the slat itself. So make sure you don't put all those screw covers on. But obviously I'm doing that all the way down, bringing the screw cover down, clamping the next one in place, driving my screws, making sure everything looks nice and even, and then doing the same thing on the opposite side. You can see on my screen, I'm going double time. I got everything in fast forward speed because it's the same process. So now what I'm doing is putting in the slats themselves. So once you put the slat in, you're gonna drive through that face. So I have one here to show you. This right here is the face that you're screwing through and into the post. You've got a ledge here and here. That's to stop the slat from going further or it hitting the screw or the screw interrupting the spacing. It's just a nice register at the backside. This right here is the face you actually screw through and into the slat. So you slide your slat in like so, and then you screw through this face and into the slat. That holds it in place. You only really need one screw per slat. If you feel like that's not enough, you can obviously put a second one in there, but one is more than enough. And then you put your screw cover on. Now, as I talked about before, it's easier to slide these on in the first place. It is a pretty tight fit. So at the very end, you'll see that we have to hammer them on with a dead blow. But you can slide it on here and you can see what that looks like. It gives you just enough clearance there for our number 10 screw. If you're planning to use a different screw other than the one that we provide, then you're gonna need to make sure that you have enough headroom for that screw to be able to fit behind the screw cover. So this next part here, I am using this block, this spacer block. If you buy a full slat package, but this right here is a machine block. Machinists would use something like this a lot. This is a 1x2x3 block, and it's a precision block. So what you have is 1 inch in height right there, 2 inches in height right there, 3 inches in height right there. So 1x2x3. These are sold as standard with a 2-inch space. So that space right there. You could technically buy slats from us separate from the receivers, then buy this, and then make sure that you buy it so that you have a 3-inch spacing if you want a little bit wider spacing. 2-inch spacing is 66% coverage. 3-inch spacing is, I think, 50, just shy of 50, or a little more than 50% coverage. And then a 1-inch spacing is obviously a lot tighter. You have to buy more slats, but that's if you really want them right on top of one another. 2-inch spacing is more than good in my opinion, but it's an aesthetic question. So what we do is we first install the first slat right here. I'll show you from this side because this is the side I'm screwing in on. And then you slide in the spacer like that. And because that's 2 inches, you don't have to remeasure or make sure that you actually are 6 inches on center. You just set that in there, set in the next slat, and then you're good to go. So these spacers are great. We sell these as well. You can buy from us, you can buy them from someone else. We have these on the store if you want to purchase them. We sell them in packs of 2 because it's easier and actually helpful to have them in packs of 2. Now I'm gonna fast forward a little bit because as I'm installing this, it's that exact same operation. Slat, spacer, right? So spacer, slat, screw, spacer, slat, screw them off. And that rinse and repeat up the wall. Now what you'll notice is as I get further up this wall, I start to get help because it's much faster with 2 people. You can install these slat walls by yourself like I was doing, but it's much faster with 2. So you'll see that what we do is we stop about halfway on this sort of coverage and we just start throwing in all the slats. And that's because when you're putting the slat in diagonally, if you remember your geometry, your hypotenuse is going to be longer, so you need to have enough room to be able to put them all in diagonally to then slot them. If we built them all the way up and then tried to slot in the last few, you wouldn't have enough room to do it. So we're pre-putting in each of these slats so that they're in the pocket. What we're doing is lifting up each slat, trying to pry out the block because it'll get pinched in there, screwing off the next slat, rinse and repeat, lift it up in place, set the block, and then put the screw in. This build right here took me and Tyler about an hour and a half to do, and I had done most of that building by myself at the start before we started doing the slats. So just keep that in mind that, you know, this is a relatively fast build. So once all the slats are in place, everything's there, all you have left is to put on the screw cover. So everything's there, everything's in place. You don't need your block anymore. You don't need your screws anymore. You just need to cap off those edges. This screw cover here does snap on. As I said before, it is a very tight fit. So when you're doing this, I have seen people try to put the screw cover on with a clamp. I would not recommend it because you just can't get enough even pressure and enough of that even pressure to get it to work. If you can do it with clamps, go for it. I can't for whatever reason. So a dead blow is the easiest option, or a rubber mallet, something that's a non-marring pounding instrument. All I'm doing is slotting one edge right here and then lifting the other edge over that cavity right there. You'll see it's lifted, and then you can see it's just almost good enough to be able to come over that edge. So you can see it's almost there. So what I would have you do then is, once it's almost in place, is just hammer it with that dead blow and then work your way down the extrusion. So from one top to bottom or bottom to top. When you do it, put the screw cover where you want it, meaning at the top or the bottom first before you start hammering, because then when you try and slide it down or slide it up afterwards, it's gonna be, it could be pretty tricky. Once you hammer on that screw cover, you're done. That is how you install our aluminum slat wall. If you bought the wood variant, or you're interested in the wood variant, and you're just watching this because you're curious, you can obviously check out our install video for the cedar slat wall with our slat receivers with the concealed fasteners. That's a different video. Or if you're interested in our products like the slat wall or our pergola, you can check out our pergola at luxurypergola.com. Thanks for watching.